Have you ever wondered if animals can feel complex emotions like us? How would we relate to them if we knew they are capable of experiencing pleasure, pain, joy, and fear? Do you think your relationship with them would change if we told you they can? In this episode, we discover why wild animals deserve a wild life and should never be in captivity or farmed. We'll find out how sentient wild animals suffer in captivity for tourist entertainment and what impact this has on them. We'll also understand more about the wildlife trade and speak to representatives from the travel industry who have changed the way they operate to offer customers more responsible travel options that steer clear of low animal welfare venues. I'm Johnny Bunyan. From Wild Animal Protection, this is Animals Are Calling. The global wildlife trade is an inhumane industry that cruelly exploits our planet's wildlife for financial gain by poaching, farming, or breeding them to be used in fashion, traditional medicine, or sold as exotic pets and for wildlife entertainment venues. Back in episode 1, I met Dr. Helen Lambert, a scientist who specialises in animal sentience. She's done a lot of research into the wildlife trade, and I began by asking her what was the common misconception when it comes to having wild animals as pets.
People want to keep lizards and snakes and frogs and all these beautiful, incredible species, and they want to keep them as pets. And there's been, obviously we humans have harvested them from the wild for many years, and that's caused real conservation issues and environmental problems as well. And so there's been a real push to sort of captively breed them, and people think, okay, they're captively bred, that's fine. That means they're not being taken for the wild, so this is an ethical thing to do. Unfortunately, although they're captive bred, that doesn't mean they're domesticated. So they're still wild animals, they still have the same instincts a wild animal does. And in the wild, a corn snake, for example, will travel for miles. In captivity, they're often suggested to be kept in a tank that's 2/3 of their size, so they can't even stretch out. So we've learned, actually, funnily enough, snakes do prefer to stretch out, and it has physiological effects on them, but also psychological effects. And actually, if you give them the choice, they'll prefer to go in areas where they have more space. And so we can use knowledge of animal sentience to design these studies that go, how do you feel? What would you prefer? And I'm not saying that, therefore they're okay in tanks that can stay fully strength out. If you actually ask them what would they prefer, obviously they still have the instincts for the wild environment that they've evolved to live in. So with wildlife trade, that's one real sort of poignant way in which we can use animal sentience to say, well, actually, these are wild animals, they've evolved to live in the wild, they still have the same emotions, the instincts, the feelings, and those, their natural behaviours and instincts are thwarted when they are kept in captivity.
As we go through this series, I believe you and I have a much better understanding of animal sentience. So I wanted to know from Helen, does our shared understanding strengthen the case for not keeping animals in captivity?
So when it comes to wild animals, when we understand about their sentience, we understand that they have their own preferences, their desires, those behaviours that are really important and instinctive and strong for them to be able to perform. The captive world can't replicate those. You can do your best. You can, if you have a huge sort of national park and animals are sort of free roaming, then to a certain extent you can. But there's some aspects we don't know how important they are to an animal. So how important is it for a cheetah to hunt down and kill their prey and have those opportunities? It's a big part of their wild existence. We simply don't know the psychological impact that it has, that their food is just handed to them sort of half processed. We know with sort of foraging animals, when you chop up their fruit and veg in a zoo and hand it to them on a plate, you're removing the hours and hours that they spend a day foraging for food, looking for food, following. I've been out with howler monkeys doing research in Costa Rica, and they travel for miles to a fruiting tree that they know is coming into fruit. And you're having to trek up these mountains; they're just swinging the fruit as they go. How important is it for an animal? Well, with herbivores, it's really easy to see because they're put in captivity, they become very stressed and depressed, they perform stereotypic behaviours because they aren't able to fulfil their time. They've suddenly got nothing to do. It's like us being retired and having no hobbies, no activity, no sort of being kept in a room with nothing to do, you're going to get bored, you're going to get depressed. You've got everything that was taken away from you, the things that you like to do, and you've got all those hours to fill with nothing to do. And it's the same place for an animal. That's a big part of their life, and you're removing that.
Helen's comparison to what it'd be like for us to suddenly have our freedom taken away really hit a chord with me. If we understand and agree that animals are sentient, then they most likely will want their own space to make their own decisions and live in the wild. Someone who understands this incredibly well is Carol Buckley.
My name is Carol Buckley, and I'm the founder of Elephant Aid International, which is an organization I started in 2010. Prior to that, I was the co-founder of the nation's first natural habitat refuge for elephants. And the inspiration for that project was an elephant by the name of Tara.
I chatted to her down the line from her home in Georgia in the US at the sanctuary she spent years building.
So my journey this lifetime has been with elephants. It's really been amazing, and they have taught me, of course, everything that I know about elephants I learned directly from them. Right now what I'm doing is running Elephant Aid International, and we have sort of a twofold effort. We help elephants in Asia, and the way we help them is to educate the mahouts, the people who care for and train elephants, and we educate them by teaching them a new and gentler and a more humane way of managing those elephants, which are always going to be managed. They're never going to be set free. And the second thing we do over there is to teach the mahouts how to do foot trimming, which is a practice that they have decades ago lost. And so elephants' feet suffered tremendously. And the other project is Elephant Refuge North America, which is what we're doing here in the U.S. So it was probably 2016, we finally found the property, 850 acres. In the southernmost location of Georgia, which means really good weather, a long growing season for the vegetation, land that is very suitable for elephants. So that's what we're doing now.
Carol's history with elephants goes back over 40 years. During her first year of college, she was accepted into an exotic animal program, and while her initial interest focused on domestic animals, a chance encounter with an elephant called Tara changed her life forever.
And I was just amazed at how intelligent this little baby elephant was, and and how strong-willed and opinionated she was, and determined she was, and she was just a baby. She had been recently captured and imported from Asia, so she was a wild-caught elephant. And so from that first day I met her, that was it. I was hooked. And a lot of people say to me, oh, you fell in love with her. You know, the first time you met her, you fell in love. I didn't know I didn't fall in love. What it was I was just blown away by how smart she was and how attentive she was. And she didn't like me at all in the beginning, because I was the one who was going to start enforcing some rules and regulations. And she, of course, didn't like that. So initially it was really not a love situation. And really, before love took over, respect is what happened. So that was the beginning of my life's journey, and it's been with Tara ever since.
Really, what we're keen to understand more about is the kind of any other anecdotes and specific times around elephants that made you realise that they have the capacity to feel complex emotions.
Every elephant is an individual, and each individual has had their own experience, and it is none of them are exactly the same. So unless you're willing to sit, and I mean sit for hours and hours and hours, and just exclusively observe them without interacting, without trying to get them to notice you, you want them to just be who they are so you can learn who they are. So it's them opening up to you, and you doing this in a way that you recognize it's going to take years for you to develop the skill necessary to be able to read an elephant. Every elephant is different, but there's some commonality. with African elephants. They have a sort of a baseline behavioral response to something that frightens them. And that baseline is get big, put your ears out, kick up the dust, run at whatever it is that you are so afraid of, and try and scare it. So if you see an African elephant do that, you can assume that there's some fear, even though the reaction would appear to be exactly the opposite. If they're afraid, why don't they run away?
Carol has spent years rehabilitating elephants from places where they're exploited for tourism and entertainment. I wanted to know from Carol whether there were any behaviours that might show how they feel as a result of that exploitation.
We use the word exploited because we see that humans are controlling elephants and making them do things that we shouldn't be making them do. Elephants, on the other hand, see it as being held captive, being told to do things they don't want to do, that they wouldn't choose to do, and not having the right to make their own decisions. And honestly, I think they feel sorry for us because I have seen elephants respond to a really bossy, over-controlling person with sort of a sigh. It's like, whoa, this guy has no idea how smart I am. But they don't react to things the same way that humans do. And it's not lesser. They are more. They're more evolved. They don't waste any time feeling like they've been violated. They're much more evolved than that. I think they try and find ways to make their life acceptable and to build a deeper relationship with those humans who do get it.
Carol's love for elephants is infectious. She treats them like members of her family, and having spent so many years with them, truly understands how to read them and identify behaviours and individual personalities. One of her favourite elephants is 41-year-old Mundi, that she recently rehomed by working with World Animal Protection. Mundi regularly makes Carol laugh, as she explains.
Elephants make me laugh because they actually have a great sense of humor. She would hold her toe of her back foot on the edge of the crate where there was a lip, like an inch lip was all. And she acted like, I can't, I'm stuck. I can't get over this 1-inch lip. So I said, okay, honey, I know what you're doing. So she went back out in the yard and I got a bunch of dirt and I went in and I covered up the lip. So there was a smooth ramp that went up, nothing to catch her toe on. So then I called her in again. It's food. It's all about food and just asking her to come in. And elephants are, they're very food motivated. And so she came in. She saw there was no lip, no excuse to be made. She walked right in, all 4 feet in. So by the 4th day, she's in. But what I noticed about her is she was non-stop pacing. Now, elephants do a thing called bobbing and swaying, and it is a reaction or a coping mechanism for stress. Luckily, elephants have the coping mechanism to deal with stress, and what it does is it kicks endorphins into their body. So that repetitive movement creates endorphins. So it's self-drugging, make you feel good. Now, the last thing you want an elephant to do is engage in drugging themselves for any length of time. You want them to go engage in activity, mind stimulating activity, physical activity. So, but in her case, she had a tiny yard and nothing else to do. She didn't bob and sway. She paced like a bear, like a cat. And she had a track that she would pace on. And I made a comment to the vet about, that's interesting to watch, that she is engaging in stereotypic behavior, just not what you're used to seeing with elephants. And he goes, oh, no, she's just walking. I said, no, this is pacing. This is nonstop, constant, and in a repetitive way on the same track. So that was important for me to see. I knew she had stress, but that showed me the level of stress and how she coped with it. And I'm happy that she coped by walking.
I'd love to know the environment she's gone into. What are the key signs you've noticed that you think she may be happier? Is she showing different behaviours? What are those behaviours? Is she making friends with Tara? What changes have you seen, and how has that manifested itself in her behaviour since she's arrived with you?
I opened the door. I let her out. She went to Bo and Tara. They're like, "Hi, everybody. How are you? Let's go." That's it. That was it. They were best buds. They're together all the time. They sleep together. They go in the pond together. They graze together. So from day one, I mean, it's really been fantastic. If Mundi did not put in the effort to learn how to socialize properly, this would not be happening. Mundi had to make the effort. She had to have the desire to be with other elephants, and she had to be willing to learn what you have to do to be with elephants, because that is not something they're born knowing. They learn it in their herd.
Listening to Carol gave me a real sense of hope that with people like her in the world doing what she's doing, animals have a real chance of living a happy and fulfilled life. While Carol is clearly making a difference, it made me wonder whether the travel and tourism industry was starting to take animal sentience seriously and make meaningful change in providing consumers an ethical alternative. World Animal Protection works tirelessly to campaign the travel industry in doing just that, and an organisation putting their money where their mouth is the Nordic Leisure Travel Group, and in particular its Danish brand Sophies. World Animal Protection set up a partnership with Sophies to help raise awareness and provide guidance on positive changes that could impact on a better experience for tourists and the animals themselves. I caught up with Sophie Lund, Head of Communications and PR at the Nordic Leisure Travel Group, who joined me down the line from her office in Copenhagen in Denmark. I began by asking her what the Sophies policy was on animal-based tourism before the partnership with World Animal Protection began.
I know that in 2015 we removed the elephant riding from the program we had, and we became a bit more cautious regarding offering animal experience. For example, we also stopped selling tickets to certain zoos such as SeaWorld and Delfinarios. So, I mean, there were some restrictions. However, like the overall guidelines for animal welfare were not comprehensive at that time. It was more like, how do you call it, a relaxed approach to being together with wild animals. And that is an approach that does not at all comply with the modern and like Nordic view on wildlife that we have today in the Nordic Leisure Travel Group. I mean, we call it like it's under the umbrella about responsible tourism,
Yeah.
and we call it like travel with care. So that's kind of a strategy that we made 2 years ago, where we like looking into being more responsible and more aware of both like the planet, the climate, and also the local communities, and also, of course, animal welfare. So it's kind of a part of that.
What fascinates me about this is, as a company, presumably one of the most important things is you make money, you have got a profit margin you need to hit, you have customers that you want to sell amazing experiences to. What was the impetus, or what was the kind of inspiration to set up this responsible kind of policy that you had in place in order to steer away from what you would call traditional types of sort of animal entertainment for tourists?
Yeah, I mean, mostly it's, of course, because we can see that's where it's heading outside the society. I mean, not least among the younger population, that people, they do want to keep traveling, they do want to keep flying, but what we see is that they are more aware of doing it in a good way. So they are expecting us as a tour operator to do something to emphasize that they can travel more with care than maybe their parents or the generations before. So that's definitely a tendency, a trend that we see.
Let's talk about World Animal Protection Denmark, because they've basically started to work with you in a broader scale. Can you tell us a bit more about the policy that you've kind of created as a result of learning and working with World Animal Protection Denmark?
Yes. So overall, I must say that working with World Animal Protection really provide us with the best possible, foundation and guidance, because they know so much. They are experts in the field with more than, I think it's 50 years of experience working with animal welfare. And that sort of knowledge is very important for us. So they are kind of advising us in Nordic Leisure Travel Group across the Nordic markets. So we see them as our guides actually within this. So we go to them for advice every time we come up with a new sort of excursions or recommendation to our guests. We are working very closely with them to get their advice, and they are looking through everything that we communicate and then we offer to our guests. So that's kind of the basics of our collaboration, I will say.
Despite us only talking for a few minutes, I could tell that Sophie had a real passion for the work the Nordic Leisure Travel Group was doing in this space. I wanted to understand if Sophie had any personal experience of animal sentience, and if so, what effect that's had on her.
20 years ago, I actually traveled to Thailand together with my son. He was 5 in that age. And we stayed working as volunteers at an elephant camp in the northern part of Thailand. But back then, even though we thought that we were doing all the right things, that was a place where they took care of mistreated elephants. So they were living there and we were working with them, feeding them and cleaning them and everything. But back then, 20 years ago, even though this was supposed to be like the best place to take care of mistreated elephants, we were riding the elephants, we were washing them, we're taking them to the river, feeding them. And that's just a no-go right now. So I must say that entering the partnership with World Animal Protection has also like opened my eyes, because back then in 2004, we went there and we thought we were doing the best we could. And I was actually also a freelance journalist at that time. And I wrote like this big article about this place and how great it was. And now I can see that, okay, there are so many things we did that you would not just not do anymore. So I'm looking forward to see like the updated version of how to interact with these incredible animals in the best possible way.
That's fascinating, and thank you for talking about that. That's quite a hard thing, I guess, to admit now. But I mean, of course, at the time you didn't realise. But I think it's really interesting to see that you're going to be heading back to Thailand with a new understanding of the importance of animal welfare. And I suppose it's a good example of really how you as an organisation are moving the needle and increasing awareness so that other people who probably had similar experiences to you in the past can make a difference. Because I think what is amazing, Sophie, about what you've done and what the Nordic Leisure Travel Group is doing is they're doing something really bold in saying we're not going to comply to what a lot of other tourism organisations have done over the years. We may lose money potentially by not going into areas that are very sort of tourist areas that are very popular, but we're doing something because we care a lot about the animals and we understand our audience also care. Has that personal experience you just mentioned, has that influenced in some way your want and your passion to be involved in this particular policy?
It might have. I mean, in this particular partnership, I am indeed very passionate. I'm also like an animal lover. And I also experience that animal welfare is something that is really, that people can relate to. Of course, also because it has some kind of emotions attached to it, but it's also very concrete and very relevant. And it's easy to understand that of course, we cannot like go as tourists and then experience wild animals just entertainers for the fun. I mean, that's easy to communicate, that's easy to understand, and that's just, for me, it's a no-brainer. So yeah, I'm very passionate about that.
While the Nordic Leisure Travel Group are making headway in offering ethical animal tourism options, I want to speak to someone who operates one and hear from their perspective. So I reached out to Yannick Andre at We Whale, based just off the coast of Tenerife in Spain. We Whale was set up to build the first noise and emission-free whale and dolphin watching fleet worldwide. Yannick was inspired to give tourists an opportunity to see dolphins and whales in their natural habitat ever since the experience he had in his teens, as he explains.
When I was a 70-year-old exchange high school student in the US, actually, so we went out there to SeaWorld San Diego back in the days to see the magnificent orcas performing in front, let's say, of a cheering crowd, and I was just as a 70 years old. So I was seeing these animals, but thinking they are so huge and big, and normally they should be out at sea, and now what they're doing here, kind of circus tricks for a cheering crowd, not really knowing or being aware what's happening here, you know. So that was a very remarkable moment for me, and since then actually I had like the feeling I need to do something for those animals, you know, because when I was a child, maybe to give you a little bit of background, my first painting was an orca as well, even though I'm from a landlocked part in Germany. So that's pretty interesting. But I always felt like I need to give something back to these animals at some point because I really admire them. And when I was then back in the States there to see this show, I was just crying afterwards. So yeah, emotionally affected a lot.
But then after that experience at 17, was that a moment that made you inspired to do something about it?
I recognized as well you cannot really move something without having a certain funding behind and certain monetary power behind. That's because the last 20 years actually I was spending more in economics and building digital companies, and finally I had like the opportunity to sell shares of my last company, and so then I said, okay, now it's time to give those animals something back, what I always wanted.
It's clear that Yannick believes that We Whale is having a positive effect on the animal tourism industry, and in particular believes that what he offers is an authentic experience for his customers.
In life out there at sea, how it is to be a wild dolphin or whale. So that's actually one thing we do. And then secondly, I think even more important is to also show the persons and our guests how to do this in a respectful way. Because also maybe tapping into the whale and dolphin watching industry, it's also an industry which is not really doing everything in a perfect way, because there's a lot of harassment out there. Just boats going into big pods of dolphins, interfering in their feeding, interfering in their resting. So our impact is not only showing persons the beauty of seeing wild dolphins and understanding wild dolphins and whales out there, explaining about them. It's also about explaining how to behave in their environment as a human. And that's something very important as well.
I wondered what other experiences Sophie from the Nordic Leisure Travel Group may have had seeing animals in the wild, and by complete coincidence she'd gone on a trip to see the whales off the coast of Tenerife. I wanted to know what the experience was like as a customer, and if the work that Yannick puts into his tours has a lasting impression.
I mean, first of all, when you're sitting there on a small boat at the coast of Tenerife and looking at these huge rocks and this huge ocean, you feel so small. So first of all, like the feeling I got was that we are just so small. I mean, who are we to try to take over or control this big nature? And I got a feeling of being like very humble, actually. Yeah, we were just smiling and just taking pictures, and really, it was not that we were like very loud or anything, because there was this kind of atmosphere and this like sense of just relax, just enjoy it. So of course we were like emotionally touched and very happy, and we felt like privileged. But it was so calm. It was really like a calm feeling.
The work that Sophie and her team are doing shows that the travel industry is taking notice of the importance of animal sentience despite the potential risk to their bottom line. I want to know what the public reaction had been to their responsible travel policy.
First of all, you have to, again, be patient, because this is not something you do from one day to another. We started like 1.5 years ago. So we are slowly beginning to see an impact. And what we can see is that we get more people requiring and asking us for the excursions that we offer together with World Animal Protection. It's beginning to show that people really do care. We can see when we, for example, post the videos and the content on social media, we get so much great reactions. And what's important is that we facilitate a debate, a conversation where people start to discussing this on our platform. And that's actually what we want to do, because this is not a marketing stunt or to sell more excursion. I'm not sure that we even sell more. I don't think we do that right now. That's not the purpose right now. But I can see that we facilitate a conversation on our social media channels, in media. And then when we do this, for example, we have only done one, but when we did the press trip in Tenerife, and when the media are writing the articles, we can see instantly that people are asking for these kind of trips, definitely.
But what would you say the key things that listeners out there should seek to avoid when booking a holiday which involves an animal experience? So what are the kind of key markers of things that you think, avoid this, or these are the markers now that you've learnt over the last couple of years as things that actually are things to steer clear of?
Yeah. First of all, what I really learned, and I'm really kind of embarrassed to admit that, but it was totally an eye-opener for me to know that any interaction that you can have with a wild animal, you can only have that because they were like broken down, because it's so much against their nature to let someone touch them, ride them, or even feed them. They would never do that if it was on their national premises, because they are wild animals. So of course, what you should avoid is, of course, to buy tickets to these dolphinariums or animal shows or any attraction where wild animals are there to entertain. That's like main rule. And then you should avoid taking these selfies with an animal, the selfies that we all want to post on social media, that I am here with this little lion or snake or whatever. Don't do that. And then, of course, investigate the conditions and read the reviews before you enter a zoo. Very important, because there are great zoos out there, but they're also the opposite. So do your homework. Take responsibility as a tourist. We will do what we can to guide our guests, but at the end, they're also responsible to look into the different terms and conditions in the countries where they're visiting. Experience them from a distance. And that's one, it's much better for the animal, and it's also better for you, because then you can see how they actually behave when they are just natural. So that's the recommendations, not from me, but from World Animal Protection. I just learned them.
No, but it's also really good advice. Do you believe that by making a difference in the way your customers interact and witness animals in a more natural environment, that they then will help have a better understanding of what animal sentience is? Like, do you think that kind of connects up?
No doubt. I'm absolutely sure. Otherwise, I wouldn't put so much work into this. Yeah, I'm sure. But I think, again, you need to be patient. We need to go small steps. Everything is contributing. So yes, I believe that.
In this episode, we've seen just how important the link is between keeping animals out of captivity and the positive impact this has on their sentience. Often, it seems, we need to see how our human experience would compare to the animal experience to make us think and make a meaningful change. What's encouraging is change is happening, and as Yannick and Sophie continue their work to offer consumers an ethical alternative, this goes a long way to help end animal cruelty and suffering forever. Next time, in our final episode of the series, we'll look into the impact of biodiversity and habitat loss on animals and people, including climate change, and what we can all do to help. This is Animals Are Calling, a podcast by World Animal Protection. We're on a mission to change the way the world works to end animal cruelty and suffering forever. Thank you to Dr. Helen Lambert, Carol Buckley, Yannick Andre and Sophie Lund for sharing your knowledge and stories. This episode was written, mixed and produced by me, Johnny Bunyan, at Pardon Our French Productions. The editorial producers are Emmy Kondo and Nicola Perez. The executive producer is Georgie Bradbury. Thank you so much for listening.